Okay, I might have to stop that. Oh no, well, here we go.
Yeah, it
No,
looks like we're
okay, it's
good.
working now. Hello, welcome back and to this afternoon at the Kindness at Work conference. And today, right now, I have Annalise Seaborn. She's going to be speaking about kindness, self-kindness, I believe. So, Annalise, you want to get going? It's all yours.
Thanks so much, Marilyn. It's great to be here. And yeah, I kind of was back and forth on how exactly I wanted to present this. And I decided go with what's best, with what hits home the clearest. And that's really just how self-kindness has affected me. When you think about something like this, sometimes you're thinking like, if I'm going to present on a topic, I need to show a lot of statistics. I need to show a lot of numbers. And then I really realized what's going to hit the most is story. So when I'm telling my story, I want to kind of integrate it where you start thinking about your story too, because there's a reason you're listening to this talk. I want you to think about applying it to your own life and really starting to see how some of that just works really well for your brain too, hearing it in story so that it becomes relatable to you so you can apply it. So starting off, I'm Annalise Seaborn. I am a recovering people pleaser, fixer, hustle addict. I'd say workaholic, but really work obsessed. I also I'm recovering from anxiety, from depressiveness. And that's something that has been a part of my life, a part of my struggle since kind of day one. So, um, self-kindness has changed my life. I didn't really realize that things could be better for me in some of those areas and definitely not in all of them. So I do want to kind of draw your attention to what are those struggles that you tend to associate with you being you. And I want to encourage you that there is a different way to be and there's a different way to experience your life. I had no idea that that was coming for me, and it definitely has. So I am a certified life coach. I love working with my clients one-on-one to really kind of design their life. So I work on life design and purpose coaching, because for me, that's been the breakthrough, my own purpose. That's why my coaching business is called Wake Your Dream, because I actually didn't realize I had a dream to wake up. I didn't realize that I had a dream that could be my life. So what I really want you to be able to take away from this talk is the fact that self-kindness can help you see and deal with what's actually in the way of how you want to grow. Self-kindness shows you what you're capable of right now, and that you're capable of living in every area of your life the way that you want to. You can see the changes you want to see, as impossible as it seems maybe right now. And then self-kindness also empowers you to start building your own powerful and firm foundation of you exactly where you are. So there are three questions that I read about in some reading. The author is Paul David Tripp, and he brings this up that there are three questions that we tend to just ask ourselves throughout our lives as humans. And we tend to kind of be haunted by these questions. So see if you can relate. Because when I heard these questions, I was kind of like, yeah, I could see that being part of the limitation in my adult life. So these three questions are: will I be loved? Will people tolerate me once they get to know me? And will I have what I need to live? And honestly, thinking about those questions this week in preparation for this talk, I really started to be like, wow, if these are sort of the three basic questions, think about those in order and how self-kindness relates to each one. Will I be loved is really me needing to ask, will I love myself? Will people tolerate me once they get to know me? That's me needing to know, will I accept myself? And will I have what I need to live is me needing to ask, will I support myself? So what happened for me? What was kind of going wrong? So my personality type is like 80 miles an hour. I'm a really ambitious person. I tend to bite off more than I can chew. I don't know if you noticed from my recovery list, but there's a lot going on there as far as like what I would consider my own goals, what drives me, what motivates me, what I was thinking of as success and how to get there. Really burnout and overwhelm and anxiety were a pretty regular part of my life. My life felt pretty chaotic. My typical update for people was, yeah, how are you doing? Right? Oh, I'm doing really good. I'm busy, really, really busy, but I'm doing good. I'm fine. I'm making it work. Right. So that was normal. And I didn't realize how much I was actually burning myself out and how much there was actually a different way to live. So it was a lot of like cart before the horse kind of stuff, right? Because pretty much all of my priorities were external. And I was not used to, like, there would be moments of self-care. There would be moments where I would realize, man, I'm pretty run down. Like, I guess I should maybe try to take a break. But my breaks tended to be like binge watching Netflix and things that are not helpful for me, right? It's not like it's filling my cup back up. These things don't re-motivate me and re-inspire me and refresh me. And with my vacation, a 9-day vacation, I would enjoy maybe 3 days of it because it would take like 5 days to even unwind. So if you think about that, if that sounds anything relatable to your pace, just keep listening, right? I had no idea where I needed to go, but I knew I couldn't stay there. And it was very counterintuitive to think that way. We all obviously sort of live the way that we live because it makes sense to us. And a lot of us prioritize what we do and have the pace that we do, partly because that's kind of our personality, but also partly because it's based on external pressures. I needed to start realizing that my actual priorities that were going to fill me up, if I was going to get things to happen in my life and really make the impact that I wanted to on other people, in my career, in my home, I was going to need to live from the inside out instead of from the outside in. From the outside in, that's a lot of stuff that I can't control that's actually making my decisions for me. I was taking a passenger seat in my own life, and that's what I needed to realize was going wrong. I didn't know how to be present. I didn't even know really what that meant because I'm so 80 miles an hour, right? And see, do you hear me say that too? I am so. So it's still current tense for me. This is something I wrestle with daily, but I know better now where to reshift my energy. So I didn't know how to be present, didn't really even grasp what that concept would be for me. I didn't feel like I was living my life fully as me. I sort of felt like my heart and my true self were completely different from goals and outcomes that were happening in my life, right? It was very compartmentalized in me and in my practices. Like, I'll just tell you quick sidebar, like your actions are going to tell you a lot about what you actually believe and what you're actually basing your life perspective on. So if you think you believe something, or if you think something is important to you, but your actions don't reflect that, I just want to encourage you to take a closer look, because that's what was hanging me up. So I also felt unsure of my focus and what mattered most to me. And I said no to opportunities really only because I was intimidated, fearful, or anxious about them, or a combo. And it's like I wasn't even really thoughtfully engaging in a lot of the decisions that I was making. I just sort of felt this pressure to keep going, keep producing, keep kind of like meeting opportunities on, I was like looking at it like I was moving towards success because I was kind of basing it on how other people were doing things. And I just didn't take the time to check in with myself and see, like, what do I actually care about? If I was going to be proactive with my life instead of reactive, what would I naturally be choosing? I didn't know any of that stuff. So those were the things that were going wrong. And like I said, I didn't know where I was going to go with making some kind of a life change, but I knew I could not stay where I was. So what did I need? I needed inside out living, honestly. I needed to change my whole perspective from the bottom up. And that's why I call this talk the powerful foundation of self-kindness, because what I realized was if I needed to reprioritize even the basis for how I was going about my life, how I was going about creating goals and measuring my success and that kind of thing, in the home or at work, if I needed to rearrange that whole basic level, I needed to start being nicer to myself, because going 80 miles an hour, never stopping, not actually resting, but just kind of numbing out, unplugging, you're doing a disservice to your soul. And I just want to encourage you, your whole self is present in your life, whether you're aware of your whole self in your life or not. And so that's why this kind of thing matters so much. We're actually creatures who are designed to live from the inside out. We're designed to live from a purposeful place, from a place that cares that our work is meaningful, that cares that our relationships are meaningful and that they're healthy. So just think about it that way too. So I really had to face my fear of the unknown and of being uncertain. A big value for me is competence. And whenever I try something new, I immediately get uncomfortable, which this should make sense, right? Because if you try something new, you are leaving your comfort zone. That in itself is going to be uncomfortable. That's going to produce discomfort, right? So there were some costs to me making a change of how I was living my life that I needed to take into consideration and practice being ready for. So I really had to face my fear of the unknown and the uncertain. Just because I didn't know where I was going with these new changes didn't mean that I shouldn't start. Because again, like I said, I knew things could not continue as they were. I knew I hadn't yet actually tried to trust the process. And I come from a faith background, from a Christian perspective. So for me, it was really like these truths that I would say that I believe that should be on a foundational level, but my actions were telling me that wasn't where it was. So I wasn't really backing up my belief with actually applying what I was considering my anchoring truths in my life, applying that to my life. Like if I say this is how I'm living, it needs to be actually how I'm living. So that's what I realized. And I was sort of convicted, like, this is the standard I want to be living by, what's true and what's real inside of me. So I really felt God telling me, because I was getting with God on what is my identity, right? And that's another piece of your foundation, is what is your identity? No matter what your faith beliefs are, think about those anchoring truths that you really base your own value and your own identity on, right? So for me, I had to really link back into my anchoring truths of God tells me I'm his child. He tells me I'm always loved. I'm always valuable, no matter what I do. He tells me I'm provided for. And he tells me he doesn't want me to live by worry or fear. So again, if I put a list of what I would say I wanted to live by, my identity that does not change, those were the things I needed to replace what was there already, which was pretty much, like I was saying before, external pressures. I was living outside in, not inside out. So I had to really accept and trust the process. Those are two actions, accepting it and then trusting it. There is another way to live. And I had to see myself as being worth the changes I wanted to make for my life. Because like I said, if there's a cost, if there's a sacrifice there, which there is, you're going to be moving outside of your comfort zone, even by practicing something nice, like self-kindness. It's going to feel uncomfortable because your whole self, including your ego, which is always about self-preservation, you are not used to prioritizing what's true in yourself and then basing your life choices on that. So just to be really real about what this change feels like. So these were the things I wanted. I wanted clarity. I wanted confidence. I wanted assurance and focus. And I wanted to be living authentically and with integrity to my whole self. So as I was, those were the things that I needed, right? So what did I change? I had to shift my self-perception. And by shifting my self-perception, my priorities naturally shifted as well. And again, like I was saying, my self-perception used to be, okay, I am working so hard. This impact is going to prove that. My identity was based on what I did for people, not who I was. And I felt like that sounds really good. At the time, I was like, that sounds really noble and admirable. Yeah, I like that. But then it's like, the inevitable, if I don't do a good job being there for people or making an impact on people, then who am I? Am I completely valueless? And that didn't line up with what I wanted my foundation to be. So I just want that to kind of hit you when you start seeing like these different ways that this popped up for me in my real life. I started catching so much of what was going on under the surface of me, because you've got to realize too, even the success that you see in other people, that you would love your life to look like that, right? Keep reminding yourself that's tip of the iceberg. There's so much underneath of who that person believes they are, what their own experiences in their life, what they're wading through that they're definitely not sharing, that they may not even be aware of, and that you definitely won't be aware of. There's so much else going on. So just a kind of a check for you, because it's been a check for me. Stop dismissing your own story. There were so many threads of what I cared about early on in my life, what I felt like I was about early on in my life. I've always prioritized my relationships with my friends. And and with the people in my life, it mattered to me, my impact on people. I would say that had been my identity since I was a kid, like an early teen even. And some of those things are really important, but it's so important not to elevate certain aspects of yourself over all of the other parts of what makes you you. Because unless you're accepting the whole picture of you, you're not really living as your full, authentic, integrated self. So I just want to encourage you with that too. Think about who you were as a kid, what you cared about as a kid, that really are the threads that have woven their way through your adulthood as well. And you're really going to uncover some main core things about yourself that you need to not ignore. That needs to be part of your foundation. So the things that I started changing were shifting my self-perception to be current to now, because another thing was limiting stuff from like other seasons of myself I had really low self-esteem for a while. I was in a dysfunctional relationship for a while. There were work opportunities that just did not pan out for me. And I felt ways about myself during those times. And it's so important we don't carry that all with us as baggage, but that we allow ourselves to shed past views of ourselves and to really take hold of the current view of ourselves. Okay. So I shifted my self-perception. I went from feeling rushed to actually feeling present. So I really paid attention to shifting my pace. And I also moved from feeling driven all the time, which is that rat race hamster wheel, right? To feeling called, meaning I'm doing purposeful work, not meaningless, empty work. I also made a shift from treating myself in a pretty dismissive way throughout my life. Like an example of that is I feel like I do everything kind of so fast, and I have so many tasks and opportunities on the table at one point that it's just like I don't put the focus in and I'm not fully engaged, right? And I dismiss my nuanced experience, me being me fully in those experiences. I kind of gloss that over in favor of focusing on the outcome or the impact. And I went from doing that to just radical acceptance of myself and of my circumstances. And to me, this is my definition of radical acceptance. It's taking everything in, the good and the bad, where you wish you were better at things, where you wish you had more growth, or where you wish you had more confidence, or where you wish your impact was better. more effective. So all of the weaknesses and all of the struggles, in addition to all of the strengths, the talents, the skills, I needed to take all of that and accept all of it, because that's all who I am as a human. And I realized there was just so much about, if I did not accept those spaces that I fell short, I would continue to think that I could control my outcomes and my circumstances. And you can't. That's what was burning me out. So those were some of the changes that I have made and that I continue to make daily, because that's the other aspect that I really want you to grasp too, is that we're daily beings, right? Like, we can make plans and that kind of thing, but as you know, the past doesn't exist anymore. The past is gone and done, right? I heard this great idea that the past only exists in your current thoughts about the past. That's a mind blower. So if you can somehow change or be present and recognize there's something you can do with your thoughts in the present that changes how you feel about whole seasons of yourself, without ignoring, without diminishing, and also without exaggerating, you don't have to feel tied to something that is gone now. So really capturing the present, and then recognizing too, it's the same with the future. The future hasn't happened yet. If you think about, who is my future you? Like, what is she like? What is she about? What is her lifestyle like? You know, that's what I think sometimes. But then I remember, I make her. I get to be her now in my very next choice. So picture that. We're made for the present, right? You can start new every day. And that is what this work feels like, starting new every day. So this is how it worked for me. How did I make these changes? Everything that was going wrong, everything I needed, and everything I changed. How did I do this? So I've really tried to simplify this. Give me some grace, because I tend to be a little bit, I see all of the things and I know I need to edit. So I needed a firm foundation. That's really what it came down to. I needed to define my foundation. Where in the world was I starting from? So I started defining what a foundation was. A foundation is what I'm going to stand on. It's what I'm going to anchor to. It's what I'm going to ground in. And it's where everything in my life is going to spring from. For me, this is what a foundation needed to be. And that's what was important to me. So you may define things differently. And I hope you're catching sort of that theme. I want you to catch that the language you use to define something, the word choices that you use, those matter a lot. So it's always such an interesting activity, I guess, to kind of journal what your definitions are for some of these things. Even thinking about some of the things you want for your life, like success, like healthy relationships. I say these things and I mean certain things, but you may think there's what you're thinking might be different. So I really want you to capture that for yourself. If you have a pen and paper, I hope you're taking notes, but feel free to take notes after this as well, because this stuff can really, really impact where you're actually going for your life. So it's something, my foundation needed to be something I could stand on, something I could anchor in, and something everything else could spring from, right? And then I needed to ask, well, obviously, what does this look like? What would I look like, or what would this change? How would I feel if I had this firm foundation? So again, I want you to think about that. What would make a firm foundation for you? What are those things you want to know that you have in any circumstance, in any situation, and you want to be feeling like in your life? What are those things? So I'd love for you to write those down for yourself. So I came up with the list that I gave you earlier of what I needed: clarity, confidence, assurance, focus, and authenticity and integrity. Those to me mattered so much. And that's what I wanted to see in my life. Because I'll tell you, going at 80 plus miles an hour burnout with a bunch of irons in the fire, I had not been yet doing my dream job. So this is a little bit on, I've had so many different jobs over the years. Okay. Like I was not one of those people that grew up saying, I know what my dream job is going to be. I am going to be this. And I stuck with it. And I went through college and I am that, that just wasn't my story. But what was really clear to me is I care a lot about people. That's always been really clear to me. I just didn't know where to plug it in. Right. And I felt limited at different times in my life. And I went to counseling at strategic times in my life. I really utilized therapy. I got coached as well. And these things happened at really key times because I didn't realize what I was doing to hold myself back from some of the things that I wanted. So I just want to encourage you too. We live in a society that really puts a lot of emphasis on your title, on your role, on your work experience, right? And some of those things we completely understand why these things are important. But it's so important too that, like I said in the beginning, you're not compartmentalizing your whole self just in terms of your title, just in terms of your work experience, right? Just in terms of your role. You are so much more than that. And whether you see it that way or not, that's going to very much affect your quality of life. So I needed to get clear on my firm foundation and start getting proactive about my life. I realized that in order to get clear, I needed to spend more quality time with myself, which, as you heard before, would be a big challenge for me since I am uncomfortable with not doing anything. That's what I thought self-care kind of was. I never really got self-care. I didn't really connect with that. Didn't really connect with like affirmations. Like I didn't, I started doing yoga. For some reason that kind of clicked for me. That was okay. But it was really, really hard for me to grasp some of these slower paced practices because it did not seem to fit what I was made for, honestly. And I realized I was going to need to be nicer to myself. My need for self-kindness didn't show up in me being super harsh to myself or like hating myself or a lot of self-loathing. It didn't show up like that. It showed up in me rushing myself, me being dismissive of myself, me honestly devaluing the fact that all of me was showing up everywhere I was going. And I was treating myself like a guinea pig. Like I would test something out on myself. If it worked, I'd let people know. I was really excited to help. But if it didn't work, I would just gloss it over. I didn't pay attention. I'm very much a feeler, but I didn't have a lot of EQ, emotional IQ, right? I wasn't really trying to be healthy for me in a proactive way. So I just want to draw your attention to some of those differences. Is like, I would have considered myself a really self-aware person. I'm obsessed with psychology. That's my background, psychology and sociology and communications. I love that stuff. I'm fascinated by how people act the way that they do and why. So all of that was a part of what I felt was in my knowledge base. And it so was in my knowledge base, but was it in my experiencing base? Not really. Was I applying it to me? Not really. And I think that we need to kind of pay attention again, those of us who are experts in something, okay, who have achieved mastery in something and take a lot of pride, honestly, in all of the energy and the efforts that we've put in. Do we use that to benefit ourselves? I mean, in a healthy way, not in a way that's like prideful or arrogant, or we're kind of beefing it up over here, right? For performance. This part needs to have nothing to do with other people. Are you using it for your own benefit? So I just want to encourage you again, like, tweak how you're looking at your own strengths and talents. Are you supporting yourself? Are you loving yourself? Are you accepting yourself? So, spending more quality time with myself, that was going to require me changing some things. The inside out living, again, that needed to practically affect everything about how I was doing my schedule, how I was using my time. Man, I was getting overwhelmed at the beginning, but that's why I needed to start simple, one thing at a time. And again, really trust the process, because when you make a change over here, this is the beauty of how we're designed. It will have a ripple effect over here. It will touch every area of your life if you stick with it. So practically in my routine, and most importantly in my head and in my heart toward myself, those attitudes and the practices I was doing needed to change. A shift was necessary, and to do it, I needed to like myself more. So that is the self-kindness. Self-kindness was needed because this is also what I realized. If I want to make these changes in fundamentally how I'm doing my life so that I don't burn out and dislike myself and just kind of not show up to my own life, if I don't want to live a passive life, I will need to be kind to myself, because this is actually what I realized I was doing. When I was spending the time, I needed to slow down my pace, right? To spend the time to actually figure this stuff out. So that's probably what you'll need to do too. Just a mental note of, again, what it costs. So I realized if I didn't like myself, I wasn't really going to stick with any changes. So that would be fruitless. If I wasn't open to myself, I wasn't going to let myself grow into who I could be, because I've already decided I'm not open to that, right? So if I mistreated myself, I would actively just kind of kill any growth that I had been doing. If I limited myself, I would just kind of passively not see my new opportunities and my new choices and possibilities. And if I didn't face reality, I would continue to self-justify the exact blind spots that were making me so ineffective. I realized, like, I was floored at the ways that I had been holding myself back in some of those perceptions. And again, I needed to not judge that, but to see that that was happening was so key, because you cannot change something that you don't face. You can't change a reality that you're not looking at, right? And all the reality that I needed to see was inside of me. So I was holding myself back in those ways. And I realized too that seeing what was really going on for me really started with me being aware, aware of the truth of what I thought I was doing versus what I was actually doing. Like I talked about earlier, your actions are going to tell you what you actually believe. So it doesn't matter that you keep repeating to other people, maybe, but this is my belief, because if your actions don't reflect that, your outcomes are not going to reflect that either, right? I needed to see the truth of what I was expecting to be true versus accepting my reality as it was. I needed to see how much my ego was actually sitting in the driver's seat, passively default autopilot running my life. And that I needed to step in with my true self and remove it from the driver's seat, right? And I needed to be clear on the limiting and dismissive language that I was using when I talked to myself or about myself. So again, the kindness part, if you think to, what would you tell somebody if you wanted them to know that you were there for them, that you cared about them? How would you speak to somebody if you were trying to show them kindness? This is the easiest litmus test or standard to see whether you're doing that for yourself or not. When you say, I just want you to know I'm here for you, do you extend that to yourself? When you say, I want you to know you can call anytime, do you extend that to yourself? Are you really there anytime you need it? Or do you tell yourself, this emotion is really annoying, I just need to keep going? So I just want to draw your attention to that too. All of the stuff that matters is underneath the surface. We're designed to live from the inside out. So I had to realize what was happening in reality, not just what I hoped or wished, right? I wanted those 3 questions that I said at the beginning. I wanted to know that I could count on myself to do those things, to love myself. Will I love myself, right? Will I accept myself? And will I support myself by getting what I need? So I wanted to be less uncomfortable and doubtful of myself. And also, I wanted to stop kind of like disconnecting from myself in those quieter times, because that was going to happen at home. And, I see clients sometimes who are like, I know what to do at work, but at home, man, I'm a wreck. I like distract myself a lot, and then I sort of eat a bunch and just kind of go to sleep. Like, that happens a lot for those of us that are way more comfortable in task-oriented things. And I just want to encourage you that there's a different way to be, and you don't have to lose who you are. You don't have to lose your drive. You don't have to lose any of your skills or your talents by focusing on some of those other areas of you that have actually been getting neglected in the process. So I wanted to be willing to stay with myself long enough to get to the truth that I needed, right? To feel and know that I get to be my real self in whatever situation I'm in and with whatever person I'm interacting with, right? Because that's a thing too. I wanted to make sure my choices and my decisions in my career and at home were actually based on who I am and what I actually care about having in my life, not based on those external pressures, somebody else's expectations, somebody else's priorities. I didn't want that. I wanted to live inside out. Being more aware requires mindfulness, at least being aware in a healthy way, right? In Dr. Kristen Neff's book, Self-Compassion, she talks about mindful awareness being a part of self-compassion. This is how she says it. Mindful awareness is balanced, non-judgmental awareness. It's not ignoring your pain and it's not exaggerating it. So mindful awareness tells me I need to observe without judging. I need to take in the positives as well as the negatives of reality. And this is actually really helpful when a lot of us are afraid of what we don't know. A lot of us are afraid of what we feel like we can't control. And a lot of us have a resistance to negative emotions. And I just want to encourage you that when you have like that work of facing reality head on, being aware and not having to judge it and just being in that moment, that's how it really feels to feel the feeling without feeling a pressure to change it, because you're in no position where you have to evaluate it, where you have to judge it yet, right? So for example, I could see how I was limiting myself, and I could see what I wanted to change for my life. And I didn't have to dwell on the fact that I had been doing a crap job at getting what I wanted in my life. I didn't have to dwell on that. I could move on. I didn't have to stay there because I saw where I was coming from clearly, and I could see where I was going clearly. And then I could build that bridge in between to try to get there. So because I wasn't hanging around judging myself and bogging myself down with these negative feelings about me, it empowered me to move forward. I needed to notice and be aware of the word choices I was using and the language that I was using. That was what I was saying before. When I was thinking about my own capabilities or my own performance, then I could see where I actually could replace certain words in order to give myself more understanding. Like, see how that feels sometimes to just tell yourself when you're feeling an emotion that you don't want to feel. See how that feels sometimes to just say, I understand. I understand. That is awful. Or that does feel just terrible to have to go through that. Honestly, I do understand. The word choices that you use, this is why it's so important that they're really authentic to you. It needs to feel right to you. Otherwise, it's going to not ring true. This is why I had a lot of issues kind of owning that the self-care stuff and like I was saying earlier, those slower practices, it wasn't just the pace. It was also the fact that a lot of language used to describe these things was just too flowery, not relatable to me. Just I didn't associate that with something I could access or something that was for me. So it's important that you get to replace certain words with what you need there to keep yourself motivated and going. You get to make that choice, right? So for instance, for me, these are a couple examples of what I replaced. I'm terrible at this. I replaced that with, this tends to be difficult for me. What could help me? So I allowed it to be true. I'm not great at this, right? But what could help me? So it gives me that permission to be bad at it and also be able to get better at it or get help with it, right? Also, I hate that I'm so angry about this. It's very petty. That is a thing, right? And instead, I could replace that with, I get that I'm angry about this. Why does this affect me so much? And then, how can I support what I need here? So, just an example too of how to keep your language proactive for yourself, and so that you don't feel sucked in to something that you don't want to take up your time, your energy, your attention. Allow yourself the feeling of practicing, because again, like I said before, you're a beginner in some of this stuff, some of this self-kindness stuff. You haven't really tried this way before, which is totally fine. Life is about trying new things. It's about learning new things and seeing which new things you want to start applying to yourself. And it feels like practice. New mentalities also, right? New neural pathways and working on that kind of thing, that takes time. So you would need to give yourself the self-kindness of give yourself the gift of time. I was very familiar with throwing money and books at myself. I was not familiar with throwing time at myself as far as something that could help me. If I had a problem with something, I would buy a book. I'm like, I should read about that. And then I would feel like I was handling it. But I did not give myself the gift of time, of slowing down enough to work through what I was struggling with, right? So slow down, be present with yourself, with God, whatever your faith belief is there. It's so important to include your spiritual self in this too. Don't let distractions derail you. We are not made to do things perfectly. We're made to be engaged in our life consistently. So the time and permission to just practice being aware, letting yourself feel like a beginner, new, open, curious, willing to find what you're going to find, right? It's you who's doing the digging. So it's for you, the benefits that you're going to get from that. So the key thing here is that I had to let go. I had to let go of the old way that I was doing things. I had to let go of the old way of seeing myself, the old language I was using to define myself and describe myself even. I didn't think that I was limiting myself, but clearly I was. You know, you hear a lot like, oh, I've always done it that way, or this is just who I am, right? Wow, like we are evolving beings. Do we really want to be using that kind of language for ourselves when we have like many years, hopefully, left of life? I don't. I don't want to do that to myself. So this is a daily thing where I want to keep my language regarding how I describe myself. I want to keep that open. I want to keep it open to new things. I want to keep it open to now, right? So allow yourself to make those tweaks and changes to feel engaged in your own life. The mind tools that I've used during this have been awareness. So you heard me talk about that a lot. Radical acceptance, which is, it really is that both and thinking. It's allowing reality to be what it is. It's allowing yourself to look at facts and work with what is instead of forcing something that's not actually happening, or trying to put all of your attention and energy onto things you cannot control. Because I guarantee you, every time you move toward controlling something that you can't control, your anxiety is going to go up. It's literally just basically a one-to-one, because your inner true self knows that you can't control what it is you're putting your energy and your attention on. So actually, when you move your energy and attention, when you start feeling anxious, check what you're trying to control, because it's probably something that you can't. So then try to focus your energy and your attention on what things that you can control, like your thoughts, like working with reality, like giving yourself the gift of like 10 minutes to just be and not have to do anything. And that was another thing that I'm sure you've heard that too. We're human beings, not human doings, right? Something like that. I don't know. There's a few different phrases about being versus doing, but that's another concept that you can tell if I'm wired the way I'm wired. I had a lot of trouble with that. And this is why it's so important to realize, like, if your identity is about something that you do, it doesn't cover the way that you're made. It doesn't actually cover your core. So paying attention to what's in your foundation. Where do you find purpose and value and meaning, right? I kept thinking, I can't spend time on myself. It's not productive. That's exactly what I told myself. So pay attention to the lies that you're telling yourself that are really getting in the way of you making these changes and tweaks to your practices. Something is telling you, you can't do that because of this, or this doesn't really line up with what you're building, or you don't have the time for that. Literally, time has always been something that I have felt very scarce in, very limited. And as I've newly kind of been getting into affirmations, that's another mind tool that I've been using to make these changes for myself too. Affirmations to renew your thoughts, right? If your thoughts trigger your feelings and then your feelings push you to act, and then the action creates the impact, you're going to want to pay attention to what that thought is, right? So affirmations actually really help me with making sure I'm renewing my thoughts in every moment that I need it. One of my affirmations, actually, this one's kind of funny because it goes against my perfectionism. But it's, if I need it, I practice it. It's like, wow, just take it all off the table. Because I'm thinking, no, if I'm going to practice it, I better start getting really good at it. And I better not miss a day. And I better not miss any opportunity to practice it, because if I miss something, then I may as well have never started, right? Because that's what I'm fighting, is a dismissive pattern in how I've treated myself. But now that I'm looking at it as an everyday thing, it's just a daily practice. So if I need it, I practice it. Another affirmation that's been pretty life-changing for me has been, I don't do anything out of anxiety. And it felt so foreign to me to say that when I started practicing that affirmation, because I was like, I do basically everything out of anxiety. So that doesn't really make sense. But again, I was getting real with myself. I didn't want that to be holding me back, right? I didn't want to do things out of anxiety. So that's when I started saying the affirmation to remind me of who I wanted to be. And then I could make the choice from that space. And literally, I'm just going to tell you exactly how I did this, actually, because I think it's kind of helpful. This is what I mean about have patience with yourself if you're beginning these practices and they feel weird, okay? If it's disorienting, because it will be if this is not the way that you usually do things. So when I felt the anxiety and when I was like rushing to do the next things, I would say the affirmation, I don't do anything out of anxiety. But then I literally would feel my body. I'd feel like myself reach for other things to do. So what I had to do is physically, I had to practice, like, it's like I'm in preschool, right? Stand like a tree, plant your feet down into the ground, put your arms down by your sides, and say the affirmation again, I don't do anything out of anxiety. And in those moments, I would actually pray, because to involve your spiritual self in those moments when you're fighting that autopilot, that default that really just kind of gets in, hijacks things, and just holds you back, you have to involve your full self, right? So I would pray. Sometimes all I prayed was Jesus, 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 because I have no words. And until that feeling of anxiety subsided. Then this is key too. The best question to ask yourself is not what's the right next thing to do. Okay, what's the right thing for me to do? That's not the best next question. It's who do I want to be? Now, what would that person do? It is a freaking game changer. This is going to help you dig way deep and get into the truth of who you are. Who does the person I want to be? Who is that person? First of all, what do they care about? What would they pick to do next? What's productive for them? And usually when we think of the person we want to be, we do think of ways to look at ourselves that are a lot more kind than how we treat ourselves in the moment, right? So as much as you can kind of integrate your future self with your current self, because that's realistically who we are, right? Like I said before, we're present created beings. We're created to live inside out, not the other way around. So think about what you're planting from. What is your firm foundation? What is happening for you, right? What's holding you back? And what realistically is a practice you could start doing? Don't overthink this, but give yourself the gift of time to really dig in deeper and get to your truth, because it's your truth that matters. None of that comparison stuff. There's no influencer, there's no thought leader, there's no expert that's going to give you a full picture of what your successful life plan should be. That's going to come from you. So the sooner you can practice this kindness of getting on the same page as your inner self, the better for you, because this is where your real foundation comes from, right? So think about those mind tools. Think about awareness. What does it take to be aware? It does take a willingness to face reality, but also you pair that non-judgmental, balanced awareness with radical acceptance. You're accepting what you find. And that's so important, right? Because again, when you think about those 3 lifelong questions that people have, will I be loved? Will people tolerate me once they know me? And will I have what I need to live? You get to give those things to yourself. You get to be those assurances for yourself. You won't feel more confident unless you know it deep inside you can trust yourself to follow through. You know, a lot of people, they set boundaries because it sounds like the thing that they need, but then they know deep inside they can't trust themselves to enforce those boundaries. That's going to limit you, right? It's kind of like that list that I was talking about before of like all the ways I was holding myself back. If I didn't like myself, like I wasn't going to stick with changes. If I wasn't open to the changes that I could make, like to who I could be, well, then I wasn't going to get there. And if I mistreated myself, I was going to actively kill the growth that I was having. And it's like, don't erode the foundation that you're coming from. You're your best advocate, right? So just be thinking about that for yourself too. Think about what your affirmations could be to renew your thoughts about yourself so that they match who you want to be in the present. Because again, that's all you can control, right? Is creating the foundation for who you want to be right now. Give yourself permission to reprioritize yourself. Give yourself the gift of time, because that's what it takes to make these changes, right? Being really clear with yourself about what's going wrong, what you want, and what you're willing to do to get there. So I hope that this has been helpful. Some of the resources that have just taken me so far with this are that book that I mentioned earlier by Dr. Kristen Neff, Self-Compassion. That was my self-kindness breakthrough, honestly. That gave me a lot of language for that. The book Insight by Dr. Tasha Eurich. That was my big self-awareness breakthrough. I'm not going to lie. I started reading that book because I was like, oh, I know this is going to really help my clients a lot. Yeah, full disclosure, it helped me a lot. It helped me a ton. And I really recommend this book to people who think they're already self-aware. This is a great book for you. And then the book Everything Belongs by Richard Rohr was my spiritual healing breakthrough. And that's honestly good for people of all faiths. So just so that you know that too. Also, my personal growth investment was starting to get my own coaching in November. So I co-coach with a friend of mine. We do that a couple times a month. And again, it's something that I didn't realize how much I needed to dig out of to be where I want to be in my life. I never knew I could feel this free. I'm allowing myself to be a human now with identity and value outside of my performance, which is big. I've never lived this way before. I am taking ownership for my thoughts and my beliefs and how those impact my life in my career and in my personal life. I am much more willing to make choices with what I would like to do with my time and how I'm prioritizing and wanting to intentionally use my time. And I'm trusting myself way more because I'm actually practicing that. And I'm willing to protect the time that I need with boundaries. So if these are any things that you want for yourself, I want to encourage you that you can get those. And again, it's hard work, but it's simple work. Mm-hmm. And let's be honest, we do a lot of hard work that doesn't seem to be very satisfying at all anyway. So why don't you start doing hard work that's actually going to be satisfying and build your purpose and give you more meaning and satisfaction and make you feel like a freaking person living your life? No one else gets to live the life that you're living. So don't make it about other people. Don't get sucked into the comparison trap. It's not worth it. And the sooner that you figure that out and really take that ownership and realize you can do this and you are actually made for more, the better for you. Your new life is possible. Okay, so I would love to work with you if that's at all something that you would like. Your first session is free. You only could have one session. There are literally no strings attached, and that's the free thing that I want to give you. Even if it's just an extended Q&A or extended takeaways, like this is something that I took away, you're going to walk away with the value that you want, at least a couple extra steps for yourself, making your life what you want it to be. I do want to encourage you to think about those 3 lifelong questions. Will I be loved? Will people tolerate me once they accept me? And will I get what I need? And realize the changes you can make to answer those questions for yourself. Will I love myself? Will I accept myself? Will I support myself getting what I need? There really is not a right or wrong formula, just so that you know, either. Self-kindness is really about engaging with yourself in the present exactly where you are, paying attention to the words that you need that will motivate and inspire you, and build your firm foundation on awareness, acceptance, and action. Be willing to face what's real, because I promise you it's the most satisfying work that you're going to do. So thank you so much for joining me. Please call or text me 269-815-8053, or you can use